Hey guys, what's up? Mike Short. We got a debrief for y'all today with a couple recent church security events that were pretty significant. Appreciate y'all sending me these articles or these news stories that come up. I don't catch everything, so whenever they do, it's nice to hear from you guys on what you want to hear about. So I'd like to, one, play these incidents so you see what they are about, and then give a quick breakdown so we can definitely have some lessons learned on how this can impact the way that you do security in your churches. So the first one is in Washington, D.C., just about a week ago, in which a priest was attacked during a prayer service. So I'm going to play the video for y'all, give you some facts, and then we'll talk through some ways that we can learn from it.
O loving mother of us all, you know our wants, our troubles, and our sufferings. It's all right, just calm down. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay. It's all right. Someone get the security guard.
All right. So the facts on this case, guys, were this happened in Spokane, Washington, at the cathedral. So for those that don't know, the cathedral is kind of the main church of a diocese. So there's numerous churches that are kind of under that. So it's the main church. They, as far as like different personnel that you need to consider. There was a bishop there, which is kind of the in the hierarchy, the top or the person that's over that particular area. So it could be a targeted person, as well as obviously multiple other clergy and people that were on the altar. This happened on a Tuesday night, so that's significant in the sense that we obviously start with our weekend masses and services that we need to cover and be concerned with, because those are the most populated times. But it doesn't mean those are the only times we need to be concerned. So this happened on a Tuesday night. The subject was homeless. He was invited inside. It was apparently one of their bigger snow days, so they had bad weather, and this guy was homeless outside of the church, and out of charity, a mother and son invited the man into the service. The interesting thing is that this guy was probably going to be pretty well undetected, in the sense that he actually sat through an hour of service without drawing attention to himself or being disruptive. And then all of a sudden, he decided to rush the altar and attack the priest. So pretty difficult one to deal with. So a couple points of performance here, guys, and really I'm going to overlay that with kind of our state, the churches I work with, the state of readiness there, and how we can learn from it. Okay. First of all, let's just talk about the use of force that was involved here. So in our use of force response to resistance continuum, we look at various levels of force that a person presents to us, and then we have the tools to be able to mitigate those resistance levels. So in this case, he would fit in the aggressive resistant category, meaning that he is actively trying to harm somebody else using his fists primarily. So he rushed the altar and then struck the priest with his fists. So he immediately jumps to that aggressive resistant phase. So whenever we're looking at the tools that we can appropriately deploy to mitigate that risk and intervene, obviously that's limited too, but we can also go up to that particular level that is consistent with the aggressive resistance stage. So that is in our policies and procedures is control holds and escort techniques. So being able to control somebody with our soft hand techniques. Pepper spray is included in that. And then the next level up is actually deadly force, so your weapon. So the interesting question is, with this one, guy running at the stage, is it a shoot or no shoot? Based on the facts, based on what you see, you have to look at the whole body and then the hands whenever we're discriminating potential threats. And this person did not have anything in his hands, and he's actively trying to harm somebody with his fist, which is non-deadly. So the deadly force option is completely out. If you drew your gun, you're going to have to reholster, right? So it's really just not an option in this case, legally, ethically, morally, right? So you cannot draw your gun in this. So you got to have and use other tools at your disposal. So let's talk about those other two I talked about. One being control holds, escort techniques. The other is pepper spray. So with regard to pepper spray, yes, it meets the threshold as far as aggressive resistant person. That's the only category in which we're authorized to use pepper spray. However, what we teach here is that pepper spray is primarily used as a self-defense tool to break contact, to create more distance. What you have here is an entanglement, right? So you have somebody actively fighting a vulnerable person, a person that we need to protect. So there's not an option really to spray him and then break contact because he's actively assaulting somebody else. So really, with regard to using those kind of rules of engagement, pepper spray is out here. You really wouldn't be able to use that in any practical sense. If you did, really what that would do is just complicate your ability to intervene. You're going to expose the priest. You're going to expose everybody else up on there that's trying to intervene. So it's really just not a good option. So really that leaves you with control holds and escort techniques. So this is a team-based effort if possible. There were lots of people that ran up there. I have no idea if they were trained security teams or not. But the reality is that we need to get hands on this guy in order to separate him from the person he's trying to attack, mitigating damage to ourselves, obviously the victim, and then protecting this guy from hurting anybody else and himself. So we're going to need to control the neck, head, primarily, and the hips are the biggest thing that we talk about in our control hold escort techniques whenever somebody is on the ground. If you want more about that, please reach out and we can look at getting some classes out to you guys. But it's a really critical piece of our tool belt that we need to be able to appropriately apply, because this is the most likely thing that we're going to need to do is actually control somebody until police or security arrive, and effectively do that without causing more damage to the person he's trying to attack, me or himself. All right, so I just want to hit real quick on the prevention side. So if you think that because you have a safety team in your church that this incident would look any different, you're fooling yourself. Because in this case, especially the state of readiness that we have, I would say, this guy initially sat peacefully for about an hour. So he didn't draw any attention to himself. There would not necessarily be any sort of reason to draw resources and attention to him. And then all of a sudden he sprints up on the altar. So the reality is, if somebody has that in mind, we're always going to be in the reaction mode unless we talk about some prevention measures, which we are going to talk about. But really what I think you need to take in mind is positions and engagement. So what I mean by positions is, in your church, are we positioning security personnel, our church safety team members, in a place? We always talk about this. The most primary target is going to be the people on the altar. They get targeted the most. And so we've got to have resources that are close to try to prevent or at least respond quickly to incidents like this. Because they can happen so quickly. So if we are just at the back of the church and so forth, or outside, and that's our security response, we are so far behind the curve that people are going to get hurt by the time we get there. The other thing I would say from a reality perspective is that we really need to be engaged. So if we are continuing to go to mass with our families, we're tending to our kids, we're paying attention, right? We're not doing security. And so you're definitely going to be behind the curve whenever this pops off, and he knows exactly what he's going to do. And by the time you pick up your head and engage, it's going to be way behind the curve. So I always encourage, if you're doing security work, you're doing security work. So you are actually have eyes and ears ready to respond and looking for things that don't look right or feel right so that you can actually engage quickly. Okay. On the prevention side of the house, guys, So this person was asked to come inside. He was homeless, struggling guy, mentally ill. So we do want to have a conversation. These people are invited. They are allowed to come in. Looking at observational perspective, his dress didn't quite match with what the rest of the people, so that's a clue. His keptness, how he takes care of himself, was different than the rest of the people. So those don't mean that he's a threat, but it is a red flag of somebody that we ought to be talking to. So we always want to have those conversations outside of the church if we can. And so if somebody's inviting a homeless person in, we want to have that conversation with them to kind of screen where they are at mentally before. And then even if they aren't deemed a threat and they can go into the church, which is fine, we probably ought to have some resources, eyes and ears within to be able to respond quickly for these types of things, just because of that anomaly, right? Not because they're bad, not because they shouldn't be in church. So we're not targeting them, but we ought to use our reason and pay more attention to them just because of those mental faculties. And we only learn that if we have a conversation with them. So I would say most of our churches don't have an outside perimeter protocol at all, right? So we're starting behind the curve by having our guys staged inside all the time instead of outside. So we're not going to pick this up early by seeing parishioners talk to this homeless guy, invite him in. We need to have that conversation outside. But if we're going to totally miss that opportunity if we don't have external patrols. So I'm going to keep on harping on that until we get that right. But that's the reality of what it is from a prevention perspective. All right, so that's all I got on that one. We actually had another one. This was in the Vatican, in which, it's St. Peter's Basilica, so one of the most famous, one of the biggest churches in the world. And they had some vandalism take place as well the other day. So I'm going to play the video and then break it down as well. All right, so this happened relatively quickly. St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican is, again, one of the biggest attractions and biggest churches in the world. Since December 24th, they've had 1.3 million people go through those doors, right? So it is a huge attraction. Obviously, most of the churches we deal with, they don't have that issue, but it calls to mind, whenever you do have a big event or attraction that's going to attract people from the outside that aren't normal parishioners. How do we deal with that, and can we set ourselves up for success in case something goes sideways? So this happened on a Friday. Again, probably not abnormal for a lot of people that aren't even Catholic to be there at that church necessarily on a Friday. But again, it calls to mind, it doesn't happen just on Sundays. These things happen every day of the week, so we need to be prepared and training our volunteers, training our staff, get these preventative measures in place so that we can be a force multiplier at our particular churches. So the guy just walked up and stood on this giant ancient altar and just started kicking over candelabras. I've read that it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those candelabras are extremely expensive. He started pulling on the altar cloth. Obviously, he's there to do damage. News articles stated he was mentally ill as well. But the response was fairly quick. They did have security forces there, I think higher security in the Vatican that responded relatively quickly, so that was good. But again, it was a mental health issue, but there was a lot of damage caused, and can it be prevented? So I think, mirroring that, taking that to our own place of worship where we go to church, where we work, how can this been prevented? So to me, I think often, especially these big events where a lot of people are coming in that we don't recognize, it is difficult. So in that case, we really, really need to focus on positions and putting ourselves in a place of advantage so we can pick up on anomalies relatively quickly. So obviously outside, we just talked about that. of the church. So we're screening people that come in. If it doesn't look right, feel right, we can have that conversation early. And then also inside. So what are some targeted areas that could be targeted for either violence, is what we're really concerned with, or vandalism, and then be able to respond really quickly to that in order to prevent as much damage as we can. Again, our ministry is really there to preserve life. We're not necessarily there to preserve material things or to use force for material things, but in this case, where they're up there desecrating holy objects and so forth, intervening and not waiting on police, you have to make that decision, but is definitely appropriate. You have the authority to do it. Again, from a use of force perspective, this guy is damaging property, right? So he's aggressively doing it, but really as far as a response goes, shoot, no shoot decision, there is no sign of a weapon. He doesn't have the ability, opportunity, or jeopardy to kill or seriously injure anybody. So use of a gun is out from our perspective as far as defense goes. So again, it relies back on that control holds, escort technique. So having multiple people there to be able to detain this person until police can arrive is going to be the appropriate response. Pepper spray in here on this particular case, there's no other people around as far as people that you're going to expose or injure with pepper spray. So it could be a potential, but the reality is that he's not actively aggressive and hurting people. He's damaging property. So if you spray this guy, there's nothing to say that he's not going to continue to do so. So you really haven't resolved that issue. And again, the purpose of pepper spray is to defend yourself or others and break contact, right? So we're trying to create distance so that we can gain an advantage and get police there quickly. In this case, really control holds, escort techniques is gonna be the response resistance that we are authorized and should use in this case. So there you go, guys. Hope that finds you all well and create some conversations on your teams. Go over this stuff, and as you see things out in the news and things like that, send them to me so that we can talk about them and go over them. It's always a good chance to do that. So God bless. Take care. See you next time.